White woman takes 9-year-old black boy's seat, and discovers he is the son of the airline's owner. I'm sorry, dear, but you must be confused. This is first class. Patricia Coleman's voice echoed down the aisle of the plane as she adjusted her Hermes bag on the seat next to her, deliberately occupying seat 9A, which the 9-year-old boy had shown on his boarding pass. The boy, small for his age, held the document with his trembling little hands while other passengers watched the scene unfold. "But ma'am, this is his seat," replied Daniel Thompson with a politeness that contrasted sharply with the arrogance of the woman in front of her. "My nanny helped him find the right seat before they went to economy class." Patricia laughed condescendingly, the kind of laugh privileged people use when they think they've found something absurdly impossible. Oh, how cute. Someone must have made a terrible mistake in the system. Children in her situation usually travel in the back seats, where there's more room to play. The boy took a deep breath, his dark eyes revealing a disturbing maturity for someone so young. There was something there, a strange serenity, as if he had witnessed this kind of situation before and knew exactly how it would end. "Ma'am, can I show you my boarding pass again?" Daniel held out the document, but Patricia didn't even look at it. "Honey, don't be stubborn. I'll call the flight attendant to resolve this properly. I'm sure they'll find a more appropriate place for his." She pressed the call button with a satisfaction that made several first-class passengers look away, clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. Some whispered among themselves, but no one interfered. Daniel remained there motionless, holding his small school backpack and watching Patricia with a calmness that began to bother a woman. It was not normal for a child to react with such composure to such a humiliating situation. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Patricia asked, her voice losing some of its initial confidence. "Call your guardians. Where are your parents?" "My father is busy today," Daniel replied simply. "But I'm sure he'll be interested to know how I was treated on his flight." Patricia frowned. There was something about the way the boy said his flight that bothered her, but she quickly dismissed the feeling. After all, what power could a black child traveling alone have? The flight attendant approached quickly, clearly nervous about the situation. "How can I help you?" "This child is in the wrong seat," Patricia declared imperiously. "There has obviously been a mistake in the system. Please find him another seat. Preferably far away from here." Daniel silently handed his boarding pass to the flight attendant, who examined the document with growing confusion. Her eyes moved between the card, the boy, and the seat number where Patricia was comfortably seated. "Senora," the flight attendant began hesitantly, "this boarding pass does indeed indicate seat 9A. And there is a special note here that—" "What note?" Patricia interrupted impatiently. The flight attendant looked at Daniel, then back at the ticket, her expression changing dramatically. I need to check something with the captain. Excuse me." As the flight attendant hurried away, Patricia felt a twinge of unease. Why did everyone seem so nervous? And why did that little girl keep watching her with those eyes that seemed to hold secrets far greater than any child should know? If you're enjoying this story about how a simple prejudiced attitude can reveal surprising truths, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the person you choose to underestimate may be holding a card up their sleeve that will completely change the game. The flight attendant returned with Captain Rodriguez at his side, both with expressions that mixed nervousness and something that looked like reverence. Patricia immediately noticed the change in his behavior and felt a twinge of irritation. "Finally," she sighed dramatically. "I hope you found a suitable place for this child. I need to get settled properly. I have an important meeting in Miami." The captain looked at Daniel, then at Patricia, and her jaw twitched visibly. "Ma'am, there's a delicate situation here. This young passenger has a valid reservation for this seat, and there's a special note in his record that—" "Special note?" Patricia interrupted with a cruel laugh. What kind of special note could a child have? Some special needs? Behavioral problems? Daniel remained silent, but his small fists clenched slightly. For the first time, a shadow passed over his young eyes, not of fear, but of a deep sadness that no child should carry. "Ma'am, please," the captain tried again, but Patricia was gaining confidence from what she interpreted as hesitation. "Look at you all, getting worked up over a badly behaved child," she continued, her voice rising enough that other passengers could clearly hear. "In my 25 years of flying first class, I've never seen such incompetence. This airline used to have standards." An elderly woman in the next row muttered to her husband, "What a horrible woman." But Patricia was too far into her performance to notice. Daniel took a deep breath and, for the first time, spoke directly to Patricia. Her voice was low, controlled, but carried a weight that made several nearby adults stop to listen. "Ma'am, have you ever lost someone important?" The question caught Patricia completely off guard. What kind of question is that?" "My mother died 2 years ago," Daniel continued, his voice remaining steady despite the obvious pain. "She always taught her that education and respect are more important than money or social status. She said that when people treat us badly, we should respond with dignity." An awkward silence fell over the first-year class. Patricia felt all eyes turning to her, but instead of backing down, she doubled down on her cruelty. "What a touching story," she said with venomous sarcasm. "But that doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't be here." Perhaps her mother should have taught him about knowing his place in society as well. The comment was so brutal that several people let out audible gasps of shock. A businessman in the front row turned around completely and said, "Ma'am, that is unacceptable." But something extraordinary happened. Instead of crying or cowering as any normal child would after such cruelty, Daniel straightened his shoulders. His eyes met Patricia's with an intensity that made her instinctively recoil. "You're right," he said calmly. "My mother taught me about knowing my place. She told me that my place is wherever I have a right to be, and that I should never let other people's fear or ignorance make him forget that." Patricia, realizing she was losing control of the situation, tried a new tactic. "Look, you're all making this much more complicated than it needs to be. I'm a senior consultant with Coleman & Associates, one of the largest business consulting firms in New York. I work with the largest corporations in the country." She paused to let her credentials sink in, then continued with renewed arrogance. "Clearly, there has been an error in the reservation system. This boy obviously cannot afford a first-class seat. Someone must have done charity or used airline miles, and now we are all being inconvenienced because of it." Daniel listened silently, but attentive observers would notice a small smile touching the corners of her mouth. It wasn't the smile of an ordinary child, it was the smile of someone who knew something the others didn't. The captain finally found the courage to speak. "Ms. Coleman, I must inform you that this young passenger is traveling under special circumstances, and his boarding pass was issued directly by the airline's management with specific instructions for VIP treatment." Patricia blinked in confusion. "VIP? A child?" "In addition," the captain continued, clearly uncomfortable, "we have been instructed to ensure that all of her needs are met with the highest priority." Instructions that came directly from the office of... "Whose office?" Patricia demanded. The captain looked at Daniel, who gave a small shake of his head, as if to say it's not time yet. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't disclose confidential passenger information," the captain replied, following Daniel's silent signal. Patricia was furious. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to a supervisor. I demand a full explanation. A child can't have VIP instructions unless... She stopped mid-sentence, a shadow of doubt crossing her face for the first time. For a moment, she looked at Daniel with an expression of near recognition, as if something was trying to connect in her mind. But her arrogance quickly stifled any moment of reflection. "It doesn't matter who you think you are or who his parents think they are," she said directly to Daniel. "In the real world, people like his need to learn that there are natural hierarchies, and some people are simply born to serve while others are born to lead." It was at this moment that something definitely changed in the atmosphere of the first class. Daniel tilted his head slightly, as if he were not only processing Patricia's words but also carefully weighing his response. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an authority that should not exist in a 9-year-old child. "Herr Coleman, you are right about one thing. Some people are truly born to lead. And today, you are going to find out exactly what that means." The small smile on his face widened slightly, and for the first time, Patricia felt a chill of genuine discomfort. There was something in that boy's eyes that she couldn't quite read, something that suggested that all that calmness wasn't submission, but rather the patience of someone who already knew exactly how this story would end. For a moment, when Patricia saw that confident smile on the face of a child she had just cruelly humiliated, a terrible question began to form in her mind. What exactly did that boy know that he didn't? What Patricia Coleman didn't realize was that her last remark about natural hierarchies had been heard not only by the first-class passengers, but also by James Morrison, the airline's flight supervisor for 15 years, who had just arrived to check on the situation personally. James knew that little girl very well. He had accompanied his monthly flights for the past 2 years, always alone, always polite, always carrying that school backpack that hid secrets Patricia could never imagine. But the instructions were clear. Daniel preferred to keep her identity secret until it was absolutely necessary to reveal it. "Mr. Morrison," the flight attendant whispered urgently as the supervisor approached, "the situation is getting complicated." Patricia, noticing the arrival of another company employee, immediately assumed she had gained a new ally in her crusade against the out-of-place boy, his little girl. "Finally, someone with authority," she declared, rising dramatically. "I hope you can resolve this mess once and for all. This child is clearly in the wrong place, and her staff has been completely incompetent in handling the situation." James looked at Daniel, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a signal that only someone very close could interpret. It was as if he were saying, "Let her continue digging her own hole." "Ms. Coleman," James said calmly, "I understand her concern, but I need to verify a few details before making any decisions." Patricia interpreted this as hesitation and decided to increase the pressure. "Details? What details? The situation is obvious. This boy cannot afford to be here. Someone probably gave him charity, or worse, it could be one of those fraud cases that are appearing in the news." Daniel remained calm, but James saw something change in his eyes. It wasn't anger, it was the patience of someone who was allowing Patricia to dig herself into a hole so deep she would never be able to climb out. "My father is working," Daniel replied simply. "He always says that work is about responsibility, not about showing up." "Work?" Patricia laughed contemptuously. "What kind of work? Let me guess, some manual labor job that barely pays the bills, and now you're trying to live beyond your means." It was at that moment that James Morrison made a decision. The instructions were to maintain confidentiality, but he was watching a 9-year-old child being verbally attacked by a woman, and that was beyond any protocol. "Ms. Coleman," James said, his voice taking on an authority that made Patricia stop mid-sentence, "I must inform you that your words are being recorded by the aircraft security system, and that discrimination based on socio-economic background is a serious violation of our company's policies." Patricia blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Discrimination? I didn't. I was just pointing out obvious facts." "The obvious facts," James continued, "are that this young passenger has a valid ticket, issued through official channels, with specific instructions for VIP treatment that come directly from a company's president." "From the president?" Patricia asked, her confidence wavering for the first time. Daniel, who had remained quiet throughout the discussion, finally spoke up again. His voice was low, but it carried a maturity that made all the adults pay attention. "Ms. Coleman, may I ask a question?" Patricia, still processing the information about instructions from the president, nodded distractedly. "Do you really believe that some people are born better than others?" The question caught Patricia off guard. It was phrased so directly and innocently that any honest answer would completely expose her. "Well, It's not about being better, it's about social reality, about knowing appropriate boundaries." "I see," Daniel said, nodding thoughtfully. "So you believe that a 9-year-old black child cannot have a wealthy or successful family?" Patricia felt she was being led into a trap, but her arrogance prevented her from backing down. "Statistically speaking, it's very unlikely, isn't it? I mean, let's be realistic about the socio-economic situation." "Statistically," Daniel repeated, as if engraving each word in his memory. "So you made all these assumptions about me based solely on the color of my skin and my age?" James watched the conversation with growing admiration. At 9 years old, this boy was conducting a more skillful interrogation than many experienced lawyers. Patricia realized too late that she had fallen into a verbal trap. "I didn't, that's not what I meant." "Don't worry," Daniel said with a smile that was both forgiving and mysterious. "People make mistakes when they make assumptions. My father always says that the most important lessons in life come when we discover how wrong we can be." Something in the way Daniel said "my father always says" made Patricia feel a chill of unease. There was a confidence in that phrase that didn't fit with the image of an abandoned or neglected child she had constructed in her mind. James seized the moment. "Ms. Coleman, while we resolve this situation, I would like to inform you that the captain of the aircraft has requested a meeting with her before takeoff." "A meeting? For what? To discuss the implications of her statements recorded by the security system, James replied diplomatically. Daniel looked out the airplane window, where he could see the airport lights beginning to come on in the late afternoon. In a few hours, he would be home, where his father would be waiting to hear about her school trip. But first, there was an important lesson going on right there, and he was beginning to realize that perhaps it was time to reveal it completely. Mr. Morrison, Daniel said, her voice gaining surprising authority for someone so young, I think it's time for Mrs. Coleman to know the whole truth about who is really sitting in seat 9A. Patricia felt her stomach churn. Something about the way that little girl spoke set off alarm bells in her mind, but it was too late to back out now. She had gone too far, said too much, and now a terrible feeling was beginning to form. What if she had made the biggest mistake of her life by underestimating a child who held secrets far greater than any adult could imagine? For a moment, as Daniel rose from his chair with a confident posture of someone about to completely rewrite the rules of the game, Patricia had the terrifying feeling that she was about to discover that she had spent the last hour verbally attacking someone with enough power to destroy her entire life. Daniel took a deep breath and looked directly into Patricia Coleman's eyes. Ma'am, before I reveal who I am, I would like to ask one last question. Do you really believe you said all those things to an innocent child just because of the color of his skin? Patricia felt the blood freeze in her veins. There was something about the way that boy phrased the question that set off all the alarms in her mind. I don't understand what you're getting at. Mr. Morrison, Daniel said, turning to the supervisor with an authority that left everyone present perplexed, please call my father. Tell him I need to talk to him about the treatment I received on his flight today. James Morrison nodded respectfully and dialed a number on his phone. Mr. Thompson? Yes, sir. Daniel is here on the flight to Miami and would like to speak with you about a situation that occurred on board. Patricia watched the scene with growing horror. The respectful way the supervisor treated that child, the fact that he had Daniel's father's personal number, it was all starting to fit together in a terrifying way. Dad. Daniel spoke into the phone, her childish voice contrasting with the maturity she had shown until then. Yes, I'm fine. But I need to tell you about a lady who said that people like me are born to serve while others are born to lead. On the other end of the line, even the nearby passengers could hear a male voice asking, did someone say that to you, son? She also said that a child in my situation shouldn't be in first class, and that my mother should have taught me to know my place in society, Daniel continued, his eyes never leaving Patricia's increasingly pale face. The voice on the phone was visibly upset. Daniel, can you put that person on the phone? Patricia instinctively recoiled when Daniel held the phone out toward her. He wants to talk to you, Ms. Coleman. I don't need to talk to anyone, Patricia stammered, but James Morrison intervened firmly. Ms. Coleman, when the majority owner of the airline requests a conversation, it's not exactly optional. The words hit Patricia like a bolt of lightning. Majority owner? Daniel nodded calmly. My father is Michael Thompson, CEO of Thompson Aviation Holdings. Our company owns 85% of this airline. Patricia's world instantly collapsed. Michael Thompson was a legend in the aviation industry, one of the richest and most influential men in the country. And she had spent the last hour cruelly humiliating his 9-year-old son. Her hands shaking uncontrollably, Patricia picked up the phone. Hello. Mrs. Coleman. The voice on the other end was low, controlled, but laden with a cold fury that made Patricia feel as if she were speaking to her own execution. My son has just told me some very interesting things about his behavior today. Mr. Thompson, I didn't know, if I had known who he was. Oh, so you only treat children with respect when you know they have powerful parents? The question cut like a knife. Interesting philosophy on life. Patricia desperately tried to explain herself. Sir, it was a terrible misunderstanding. I would never. I have black friends, I contribute to social causes. Ms. Coleman, my son recorded the entire conversation on his phone, which was connected to our family security system, Michael Thompson interrupted coldly. I have a record of every cruel word you directed at a 9-year-old child. Every suggestion that he didn't deserve to be in first grade. Every comment about her situation, and about people who are born to serve. James Morrison watched Patricia's breakdown with a mixture of professional satisfaction and human horror. In 15 years of his career, he had never witnessed anyone dig such a deep hole for themselves. Furthermore, the voice continued relentlessly, Our public relations firm is already preparing a statement on zero-tolerance policies for discrimination. Her conversation with my son will be used as an example of the type of behavior we do not tolerate on our flights." Patricia slumped in her chair, realizing that she had destroyed not only her reputation but potentially his entire career. The recordings would be shared, analyzed, and dissected on social media and in specialized media outlets. "Please," she whispered, "I can make up for this somehow. I can make a donation, I can." "Ms. Coleman," Daniel interrupted gently, taking the phone back, "the only thing you can do now is learn from this." "Dad, I can handle the rest from here." "Of course, son. I'm proud of how you handled this. I'll see you at home." Daniel hung up and looked at Patricia with an expression that mixed childlike forgiveness with a wisdom that shouldn't exist in someone so young. "Ms. Coleman, my mother really taught him about knowing his place. His place is to treat all people with dignity, regardless of who they are or how they treat him." Patricia was crying openly now, realizing she had been defeated not by wealth or power, but by the simple decency of a child that she had tried to humiliate. "Mr. Morrison," Daniel said, reverting to being a normal child for a moment, "can I sit in his seat now? I have a book to finish before we get to Miami." As Daniel settled quietly into seat 9A, Patricia remained frozen, realizing she had just starred in what would become one of the most documented cases of instant discrimination in aviation. Her arrogance had created an enemy far more powerful than she could ever imagine. Not Michael Thompson, but the recorded and witnessed truth about who she really was when she thought no one important was watching. As the plane finally prepared for takeoff, one question haunted everyone present. How many other children had suffered similar humiliations at the hands of adults who felt superior but simply did not have the power to turn injustice into a lasting lesson in humility? 6 months after the incident on the flight, Patricia Coleman sat in her small apartment in the suburbs, far from the elegant neighborhoods where she used to live. The recording of her conversation with Daniel had gone viral, racking up over 5 million views and completely destroying her professional reputation. Coleman and Associates had terminated his contract immediately after the video circulated on social media. His corporate clients canceled all projects, and no reputable company wanted to associate her brand with someone who had publicly humiliated a child based solely on racial prejudice. "Woman who attacked 9-year-old child loses everything after discovering who he really is" was the headline that appeared whenever anyone searched her name on Google. Her professional life was over, her friends had abandoned her, and she now lived on the few resources she had managed to preserve before her total downfall. Meanwhile, Daniel Thompson was celebrating his 10th birthday at an intimate party with his family. Michael Thompson watched his son play with his cousins, impressed by the maturity the child had shown throughout the whole situation. "Dad," Daniel asked that night, "do you think Mrs. Coleman learned anything?" Michael smiled, recognizing his son's precocious wisdom. "What do you think, Daniel?" "I hope so. Mom always said that people only change when they feel firsthand what it's like to be treated badly," the little girl replied thoughtfully. "Maybe now she understands how I felt that day." Thompson Aviation Holdings had implemented a national program to raise awareness about discrimination in air travel, using the case as an educational example. Daniel, despite his young age, had unwittingly become a symbol of how to respond to injustice with dignity and intelligence. At school, his teachers noticed how the experience had matured him. Instead of becoming bitter or vengeful, Daniel developed even greater empathy for others who suffered discrimination. He often helped classmates who were bullied and became known for her ability to resolve conflicts calmly and wisely. Patricia meanwhile, began volunteering with organizations that fought racism, trying in some way to repair the damage she had caused. It was humble, unpaid work, very different from the luxurious life she had led before. But for the first time in years, she was learning about the real consequences of his prejudices. During a mandatory therapy session ordered by the court in a civil lawsuit Michael Thompson filed against her, Patricia finally admitted, "I destroyed an innocent child's life because I couldn't accept that people different from me could succeed. And in the end, I destroyed my own life." The story of Daniel and Patricia spread far beyond that flight. Schools began using the case in educational programs about respect and dignity. Companies implemented training on unconscious bias. And thousands of children learned that, regardless of his or her background, they deserved to be treated with respect. Daniel grew up understanding that her painful experience had turned into something bigger, a lesson for all of society about how small acts of cruelty can have devastating consequences for those who commit them, while dignity and forgiveness build bridges where before there were only walls of prejudice. The little girl who, at the age of 9, faced discrimination with the wisdom of an adult, had proven that true strength lies not in demeaning others, but in maintaining one's own dignity even in the face of the cruelest injustice. Daniel's best revenge was not to destroy Patricia Coleman. It was to show the whole world that when we respond to hatred with intelligence and prejudice with education, we not only defeat our aggressors, but we help build a better world for everyone. If this story about how dignity can be more powerful than any revenge touched his heart, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation of prejudice? How did she react? Her experiences can inspire others to always choose the path of dignity, even when injustice tries to make us forget who we really are.